you find God
Right.
or religion or something, but
So some of
I
the,
mean,
go ahead, sorry.
maybe we should take a deeper dive
Yeah.
in the future on this guy's life story in depth, maybe get to talk to one or another person who knew him and flush this out, because his story, if he is that, obviously his story is going to make sense as to like, you did kill two people, you've been convicted of it. It might be instructive to figure out based on the people who do know this fellow, and there is a documentary coming out about him, I believe at some point, but maybe just about the Long Island serial killer in general, who has not been identified yet. But to really figure out, well, would this story fit with someone who becomes a killer, or does it seem not consistent? Because he says he's innocent.
John Bitrolf,
Right.
from Long Island, convicted of May of that year of the murders of two sex workers from 1993 and 1994. In June of 19, a proposal was made to use genetic genealogy, identify the identified victims, and possibly link it to the Long Island serial killer case. So, yeah, I mean, this gentleman here, Mr. Bitrolf, why wouldn't he fess up? And like I said, maybe, if he's serving murders for two sex workers, I'm sure that he was sentenced to life in prison. First,
50 years, which for him is life. Yeah.
50
possibility of parole, but there isn't. But I mean, there is supposedly a possibility of parole, and his lawyer still says he didn't do it, and he maintains his innocence.
So he's maintaining his innocence, and if they can't link him through DNA to the other people, then there's still a serial killer out there, and there's still someone on the loose. And maybe that person just died of natural causes. Maybe the person
definitely possible,
but was in a car accident and died. There's probably a lot of unsolved. There's a lot of unsolved cases out there. Can you, and you tell me this, can you live it, and you see it with like Dexter, for example, can you be a functioning person, but then also, have a side of you that, some of the signs of a serial killer: lack of empathy, lack of remorse, impulsivity, narcissism. Oh my God, I don't like any of these. Superficial charm, shit, manipulation. That sounds like a private investigator to me. Addictive personality. Like, can you have those common signs and traits and then still go to the office and work 9 to 5? Or is that just TV?
No, I think you can. I don't think that these people have to be marginal folks. Look at John Wayne Gacy, right?
Yes.
So John Wayne Gacy was like a contractor, one of the most prolific serial killers of all time, burying boys and young men in the crawl space of his home. Took like 30, or I forget, lots and lots of bodies under the crawl space of his home before people said, we better get a search warrant and look at John, because it took until he was at a hardware store or something, and one of the clerks who helped him or whatever disappeared after helping him. And they're like, oh, wait a sec, John Wayne Gacy was the last person seen with him. But here's a guy who everybody loved him. He worked as a professional clown, worked as a professional clown at kids' parties. He was a contractor, responsible guy. The neighborhood folks loved him, and yet he's got this crawl space full of dead bodies. So people have the capacity to create sort of compartmentalized lives, which is interesting. I mean, that alone is interesting, that you can be interacting with someone, and if you're putting yourself in harm's way, like somebody who's a sex worker, you better be hyper vigilant for anything that looks amiss. Right? The work itself is amiss. I mean, it's too dangerous, et cetera, right? However, yes, people can do that. You can have one self, and then another. It's a serial killer, which is
that
remarkable.
the same though? Is there a difference, doctor, between compartmentalizing your personality, or being diagnosed with multiple personalities?
Yeah, I think it's different because multiple personalities implies that the other personalities are sort of taking center stage, and you don't have an anchor. You can't select, you can't determine when is this going to happen. You know, if you're a mafia kingpin, you might be the best dad. Your kids would say, wow, what a dad. And meanwhile, you're torturing and killing people and funding prostitution and selling drugs. And yet to your family, you're good as gold. That's compartmentalizing too, right?
Yeah, well, they say a lot of serial killers have that, you know, people ask, do serial killers feel love? And they say, and I guess Tony Soprano, I guess, in a way, is a serial killer, you know, but, you know, a lot of people that are serial killers, or those serial killers, go home and they flick the switch and they have an extreme love and empathy towards their particular loved ones. You know, and so it's kind of a crazy balance.
So,
that they're able to do this. They're out killing people, but then they go home and their family is the most important thing in the world to them.
so what's the one thing you would say if you were sitting with, what's his name, Bitten, whatever, the guy in jail who might be, in fact, the Long Island serial killer, maybe. If you were sitting in his jail cell with him, what would you say that you think would be your best shot at getting him to confess if he were guilty?
I don't think I would take the, you know, you need to do this for the sake of the families in their closure, because I don't think that they care about, obviously they don't care about the families. And like you said, unless they saw the light of day, or, you know, had an epiphany and found God, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it would have to be something that was more self-serving to them, you know, in the fame that kind of goes along with it. Instead of saying, you know what, there's 6 families out there that need answers, you know, can't you speak up and admit so they can have that emotional closure and move on with their lives, you know, and shut that door of this nasty experience. I think you have to do it somewhat in a way where, like I said, you're going to get them to be able to feel some grandiose behavior and just feel like, you know what, I'm the man, you know. You know, you know, prison cred, whatever the case may be. You know, I think you need to feed their sick, twisted, demented ego, as opposed to thinking that you can get under their soul to get them to feel for those families.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think, you know, my usual way would be to, you know, first appeal to them as the first victim and say, listen, but you were killed too. And I know that. So let's go through the ways in which you were extinguished as a human being. I want to know that. And hope that somehow we would reawaken some kind of empathy, and that the person might say, all right, look, I better go with the truth. Yes, I killed these others. But I would tend to bribe them. So I would say, look, here's the thing. If you can demonstrate that you did do it, and by the way, you're never getting out of here. Okay, 50 years, they're not paroling you.
I know where you're going with this.
You're not going home with COVID. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna die in the prison. Okay.
Right.
Now we can give you photos and videos of the victims. Okay, growing up. We can give you a whole library for 2 weeks. You can have it, or maybe even 2 months, and you can peruse these photos at your leisure. And you'll really get to know a lot more about these people, and the whole investigation will also give you elements of the investigation. You can see how it unfolded, and what they were thinking at various times. But in order to do that,
you need to admit,
you need to prove that you did this. Otherwise, you don't get the good stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's funny, there's a show, oh God, what was it called? I watched recently. I think it was Manhunt, maybe, I believe. Something that I binged during the pandemic. And I think it was almost something as simple. And I thought you were going to go down this road when you said give to them. I was thinking
cigarettes.
It's something as dumb as giving them extra food in their canteen.
Sure.
Because you're also dealing with an infantile brain. Like they're masterminds. They can
Right.
people, they can go to extreme lengths to, to destroy people's lives.
Right.
It could be something as simple as bringing in a box of Dunkin' Donuts every week.
Well, I don't know who's the infant. I mean, here we are spending millions of dollars to hunt down the Long Island serial killer. And if it could cost, look, I'm willing to pay the guy $1,000 a year out of our tax money for use in the canteen and 3 Hustler magazines a month from old issues. Because what do I care? Like we need this, but you don't get it unless you can prove you did it.
Yeah.
So,
that's where you come in, and that's where your expertise comes in. You can't go in there and you can't play, you play good cop, you play bad cop. You can't go in there and threaten them. You're dealing with
cocaine. We'll give you a gram of cocaine a week, okay, for a year.
For the closure of all these families.
But dude, you gotta prove you did it. Or
you're giving drug addicts heroin, places to shoot up safely. So why can't we go?
Right.
Why can't we go into prisons and
solve crimes?
And solve crimes that way by being a little bit, and I hate to say that, a little bit more liberal when it comes to
play their game.
Right.
We're so locked in the routine, right? And oh my God, you can't do this, you can't do that. I remember there was a guy that I trained with, name will remain silent, but or unknown, but he used to smoke. It was completely unfathomable and not allowed to smoke with your patients, of course, at the VA, the Boston VA, where I did some of my psychiatry training. But man, he used to really commune with these guys, and part of it was he'd light up a cigarette, and I opened his door once to his office. There he is, smoking with this veteran smoking. And you know what? He established great connections with them. The other thing is a lot of these guys, for instance, ketamine encourages people to tell more about themselves and have moments of epiphany. And some would say moments of sort of sacred connection with the Almighty, right? So, ketamine, psilocybin, magic mushrooms, etc. We haven't begun to fight.
Right.
Let's get these guys and say, do you want it? This will be an amazing experience for you, but we're going to interview you during it. Right? I mean, why not?
Right.
They may say no way, but they might say, all right.
What's that? What's the drug that they used to give for the truth serum? What's that drug?
Amytal nitrate, actually, was the truth serum, which, we could go with that, or you could just say, listen, let's get high together and we'll talk about life and right. But we're not willing.
Right.
It's like we're stuck in second grade about how to talk to people this way. Like, let's go.
Everything's black and white, and me as a 30-year investigator, you have to really think in that gray area in order to
live in the gray area. Right. Listen to you. Right. Listen to you. Just because we're on TV, you're like, oh, you got to think, you got to be able to think in the gray area. Like you're a cage fighter. You're an MMA fighter turned investigator turned cage fighter. Which do you want? Why are you, by the way?
Yes. Why
are you coming so close so frequently to darkness?
Right.
Why?
Well.
Good dodge. We'll get to it. We're going to get to it. The investigators, there's a reason you want to solve things. You want to solve things. It's very important to you.
What's weird is that
you're an actor. There's something about you that's very strange. I don't mind saying it.
I find, acting kind of goes into what I do for a living as an investigator. Before I became an investigator, I trained as an actor, and that just kind of helped me, through the years, using improv skills and whatnot out in the street.
Helped you avoid some of your truth is what it did.
Acting clearly helps me avoid truth, and 100%. My whole, Yeah, 100%. And, and then when my sons were diagnosed at a very young age, my twins,
Right.
I have three boys, then, I think, at the same, kind of on the same time, like, oh, you're twisting this on me, kind of at the same time that my kids
You're a
were
twisted
twins,
guy.
right?
Yeah.
The time
Yeah.
my twins were
Sorry.
diagnosed, I was really starting to see where I wanted to go professionally. And, I was a prison guard, and I was, looking towards law enforcement, looking towards other things. And then when they were diagnosed with this terrible disease, I think I found that playing a character as an investigator was, knowing that I was going to live a lifetime of having to care for these kids, that uh,
Yeah, I know.
if I
Amazing.
can play a certain role, it's going to kind of take me out of some of that reality that I have on a day-to-day basis. But what I was going to say earlier,
Right.
that I tend to, I know this sounds twisted, but I tend to like a lot of my clients who are criminals.
That's interesting.
Like, I'm not going to say I'm going to hang out with them, but you become close with them. You get to know them, and then
That's true.
I guess you put up a wall or something where, I try to believe their story or what I'm investigating, and fight with the conflict of thinking about the victims that are also involved. There's always victims in every case I work on.
Right. Right.
Every case I work on, 400 criminal defense cases a year, there is a victim. For
Right.
the most part, usually a person, sometimes it could be a bank or a business or whatever the case may be. But nine out of 10 times it's someone that either had, was sexually assaulted or murdered or beaten or, taken advantage
So you're
of.
very close to these dark stories.
100%. So, so going back to that, some of the fascinating habits, since we're breaking down my personality,
Yeah.
some
Your
of the
psyche.
some of the fascinating habits, and I'm curious if any of these apply to you, because you're an
No.
interesting character as well. Don't hide behind the wall of being a
No.
psychiatrist here, okay?
Yeah.
So some of the habits of serial killers when you're young, I think some of the things that start to materialize, they do certain things. They have a lack of empathy for animals. A lot, like I remember a friend of mine came to me for advice because their young child, like elementary school child, was abusing animals.
Bad
And
sign.
this person is like, is my kid going to grow up to be a serial killer? And I'm like, get your kid into therapy. And try to figure out why he's doing this, and why his brain is why he has this lack of empathy for something that's, the most unconditional personality, on the planet, is an animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so as an investigator, I totally get it. As an investigator, not that we'll never provide a blueprint for people to pull off crimes, but what's the one thing you would say, don't do that? I've seen people do that. That gets you caught. Is there something you'd say, like, I can't believe people do this repeatedly, and then I end up investigating and it's like, oh, yep, they did that, and now they've been caught. So what's the one, don't do that?
I think a lot of my clients that are in jail or get caught or end up doing time in jail, even if it's something in the county that's only a month or 2 months, they're like homing pigeons. They go back to where it all started, where they get themselves in trouble or they get themselves jammed up. It's usually all they know. So I'd say stop hanging with the same group or the same crowd. I don't know. I mean, I always wonder why, and they say criminals are dumb for the most part, but I always wonder why, criminals drive around with windows that are above the tinted grade in your state. Like, you're just asking to get pulled over. When you get pulled over, the cops are just going to use that as a probable cause to go on a fishing expedition. And that's when they find the gun, and that's when they find something else.
Yeah.
Like, Be a smarter criminal, for Christ's sake. If you want a career as a criminal, stop being so goddamn stupid about it.
A friend of mine once said to me, the people who are buying the decommissioned cruisers,
Yes.
they're all serial killers,
Right.
right? Because they're all going to get the big light and put it on the edge of the car, clamp it on and stop people on the road, right? It's like, why would you want a decommissioned police cruiser unless you're a serial killer?
Well,
or whatever.
or you're just like, a security guard that always wanted to be a cop, that
Right.
never could, unless you're Paul.
There's that too, but yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. But anyhow, why don't we start this movement to start incentivizing incarcerated criminals to admit other things they've done? If they can prove them, they get goodies.
It's an incentive-laced program, and
Yeah.
and I think it would open up a Pandora's box of unsolved crimes out there, and then that turns into closure for people.
It's like trading what's that biblical story, right? Where trading your birthright for a cup of porridge. People do it all the time.
Yeah.
Hence it's in the Bible, or it's in the Bible because, well, whatever, one way or the other.
Right.
People do that.
Right.
And, in some ways, criminals having less to lose might do that more and say, all right, I'll give you 2 crimes that are unsolved for, a bag of heroin 3 times.
Yeah, what, what? So what? If they're going to be in prison for 50 years, let them shoot up. So some of the other fascinating habits, I guess, that serial killers have, it's funny because it's kind of like looking at habits of serial killers, looking at common signs, looking at traits, looking at all these things. It's kind of like going on WebMD, and next thing you know, you diagnose yourself with like 16 ailments. Those people, like I've done it, the hypochondriacs of the world, and you have the sniffles, and you go on WebMD, and the next thing you know, you're diagnosing yourself with with everything under the sun.
Yeah.
So if you look at the traits of habits of a young budding criminal serial killer, you got things like setting fires. Well, a lot of kids set fires, stealing and fighting, thrill seeking. I guess if you go to a lot of amusement parks and you like roller coasters, does that potentially mean that you're going to live a life as a serial killer? Substance abuse,
right, substance abuse, addictive personality for sure, because you got to imagine that if you are somebody who has taken 2 lives, you don't want to go to prison for the rest of your life. You don't want to be executed, most likely, and yet you find yourself saying, maybe I'll just look at Craigslist. I'll just look at it.
Right.
I won't call anybody.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, well, maybe I'll call, but I won't hire her. Uh-oh, now the voice has got me going. All right, I'll hire her, but I'll just pay her for sex, and then I'm going to let her go home. Doesn't happen that way, right? So there's this failure to be able to resist certain stimuli, this addictive behavior that should be present much earlier in someone's life. It didn't start yesterday.
You know what another one is, which I found fascinating, and something that I've never dealt with, but I used to have a girlfriend that used to do this, and my kid's in the office listening, but bedwetting.
Yeah.
Bedwetting is another thing.
Well, and right. So bedwetting.
Yeah, you probably talk days about bedwetting.
Most bedwetters are very good people. There's nothing wrong with bedwetters in general. I mean, as a disclaimer.
Are you saying that you wet beds?
No, but I have friends who did, and look, I mean, it causes people embarrassment and all that, and people generally get over it. But I guess it could be an early sign that somebody is not really like at one with himself or herself. Like the sense of like integration hasn't really taken hold, and so they're not really in control of every facet of themselves. And then also there is that embarrassment and humiliation, and also bedwetting. Maybe it's because you're already psychologically upset because you're not being well loved or well cared for.
Yeah.
And so it's so much there.
I think I hit a nerve. Sorry.
What's that?
I think I hit a nerve. I
I
apologize.
gotta go to the men's room.
You all right? Yeah, I can't see below your chest. No, did you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's
So back
so
to the Long Island serial killers before we wrap this up. Uh, the
call them
girl
serial killers. That's
killer.
interesting.
Yeah, I say that because I think it's still an unsolved case, and
Okay.
I think it became a point where there could be some corruption there, and I think a lot of resources were used. And you see it a lot in law enforcement where they just want to have someone,
Yeah.
and they just want to settle on someone for the sake of the public, for the
Right.
sake of resources within their department, and all the time that this particular case and the resources that it was taking and the people they were pulling in. But I think if we took a ride to that area and we started interviewing people, I think every single one of them in there, for the most part, would probably say that, what, I think that this person in prison isn't the person. There's still someone
Oh,
else.
that's right.
I think they think this person's walking amongst them. I think people are looking over their shoulders in that community because it's still.
Well, the other thing is we don't do case finding. So why don't we do a little bit of case finding here and say, listen, if you're out there and you find yourself drawn to doing very dark things, right? And you don't know where to turn, give us a call.
Yeah.
And maybe, because we don't do that.
No, we should do that.
We should be doing that. We should be putting out the word. It's interesting. We say, if you're addicted to drugs, go to AA. If you're right, go here. If but we don't say to people, listen, if you find, and why? Because we hate them.
Right.
We despise them. So we can't bring ourselves to say, if you are doing this, there's help for you.
Right.
Well, here's help.
And if there's anyone that doesn't judge a criminal, it's a third-year criminal defense investigator that sits in front of them.
No, and I'm not judging either. I just want to understand.
And you as a forensic,
that's weird. You know what? I think we just came up with a whole new field, which is preventive health for killers.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself, then let's go.
violentminds.com. You can reach out to us. You can be a silhouette. You don't even have to be a face on camera. You can just be a voice.
Plus, we're not telling anybody about anything. It's a cone of silence. And so you want to call in. Now, look, I don't pretend that anyone's going to do this, but if you want to do that and you feel like, man, I'd really like help, then disguise your voice, whatever you want to do.
Well, you know what? We're wrapping up the hour here. Again, like I said, I think we're starting to get our sea legs. I think we're courting each other. Our romance is.
You've been attracted to me for a long. Yeah, I know.
Romance. Our romance is blossoming. And I gave myself a little haircut before I came on today because I actually can grow a little hair. Can you?
I can, but someone gave me advice early on. They said, cut it short and tan the top. Because I was trying everything, right? Like, and I had the ring of hair and then I had this, that. Cut it short and tan the top. So it's better. I thought about that tattoo thing. You know that they have a tattoo solution, pinpoint tattoos. Yeah. So people think you chose to shave your head, that you have hair and you chose to shave it.
Well, that's what I look like.
Is that a tattoo?
No, but I
think it's a tattoo.
A tattoo.
Why did you do that?
Yeah, I like being bald. It works for me. So Dr. Keith Ablow, I'm Mark Chauppetta. You can go to violentminds.com. We're going to be coming to you on the DBNA television network. So big shout out to them. Each and every episode you're going to see, there's going to be 2 parts, but you're going to see some other subjects that are in the mainstream media. We're going to get some guests on. We're hoping to get some guests that actually have some tall tales and stories to tell.
Well, maybe we'll get guests with violent minds, but we'll help them.
Yes.
And we'd like to think that this is the ER for violent minds.
That sounds good. On that note, you hang on for a second, Dr. Ablow. Make sure you check him out. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, Violent Minds. Make sure you you follow all Dr. Keith's endeavors, Pain to Power.
Pain to power, pain dash the numeral 2 dash power.com. We want to make it as hard for people to find me as possible.
Yeah,
So
no
it's the worst URL ever. Pain dash the number 2 dash power.com. Pain to power.com.
It's going to run below this when it's airing. And if you can't find it, then you can just Google me, and you can retain me for free to locate Dr. Keith Ablow. So on that note, we'll see you on the next episode of Violent Minds. Everyone be well, be safe, and don't be too violent.